BIP of Bizarre Interest Productions, and it's time to talk about the Metal Saga of Beyblade. Particularly, who should have ended up as a legendary blader. Now, originally, I was going to point out the multitudes of this debate, the issues of just having everyone be past characters instead of the nuances and understanding of why 3 returning characters and 6 newcomers were chosen in the first place, alongside the themes of how being a chosen one could impact people of different backgrounds, leading to different sides being taken during the series, and how the choices people want or would replace would have to run into finding parallels of older characters in order to slot their roles into the story, well, with both cohesion and comprehensive thought and continuing character arcs, until I remembered a point I was originally going to make, because it's been a question that's been bothering everyone for a while. The anime story is inspired from the manga, so who exactly were the legendary bladers in the manga? And that answer's tricky because I had assumed the Beyblade Metal Fight manga wasn't translated. 2025 is the hindsight, because while I was digging, I found people fan-subbed and translated all of the chapters for the Metal Saga's manga and a Zero G manga. It seemed to be a collaborative effort from different groups, but all the chapters are subtitled. And while I read up to the chapters I found were necessary, while I still attest that it's inferior to the anime in a lot of aspects, especially by design, I still appreciate it in spite of the lack of character balance. But let's get to the topic. Who were the legendary bladers in the manga? See, that's kind of the problem. There's only like 4 confirmed in the manga, and for everyone who's upset that it wasn't their favorite characters from the first 2 seasons, prepare to be even more disappointed. Basically, here's what happened. Starting from chapter 34, it's been 6 months since Big Bang Bladers, better known as World Championships, ended, and both Jinga and Kenta see that there's no one strong enough that can keep up with him, Jinga in this case, until Yuki runs into them to tell him that there are strong bladers, but promises to explain more if he could beat his Mercury Anubis. Jinga wins, but to the surprise of people that are really happy and excited about waking up in the morning to crap on Yuki for some reason, Yuki's revealed to not be a legendary blader, but fought Jinga and explained to him that he was a member of the WBBA, Yuki being a member of the WBBA, and explained to him that the legendary bladers were bladers considered so strong they couldn't enter the World Championship bladers, as they were banned from official tournaments given how extremely strong they are. The manga panel shows that there's about 5 of them, but they don't really go into detail when it comes to their silhouettes. You can argue they're practically placeholders, just like the ones from the anime. But thanks to Jinga winning both tournaments from Season 1 and 2, the WBBA has issued certain active bladers versus legendary bladers for the Ultimate Championship of the planet, Ultimate Bladers. To determine who will take part in this tournament, the WBBA has compiled and analyzed the past active bladers around the world, selecting the 64 bladers with the most Bay points. And Kenta gets to join too. Now, I'm going to speedrun what happens between Chapter 35 and 45, but basically here's what happens. Jinga already has Cosmic Pegasus because it evolved during his fight with Damien from Galaxy Pegasus. The Star Fragment doesn't play a role in who gets chosen and who doesn't. In Chapter 35, Jinga's first opponent is Kyoya, who debuts Fang Leon, but Jinga survives his crushing Fang and wins at the Osaka Castle. In Chapter 36, Ryuga ends up fighting Jinga as his next opponent, and Jinga just barely pulls out the win. And yes, Ryuga also debuts Life Destructor. The battle takes place in Ares Rock, and this is Ryuga's only battle. He does survive the events of the manga. In Chapter 37, Aguma is confirmed to be a legendary blader, but doesn't have the Wang Huzhang connections and fought Jinga, but it doesn't really have that much of a backstory outside of him just being really strong and big. The fight takes place at Alaska, and yes, they're picking deserted spots to hold these battles because they state that Aguma is a legendary blader. So he's the first one that we know. At the end of the chapter, King actually fought Julian, who was surprised about there being a blade that could spin in both directions. In Chapter 38, Kenta actually fought Johannes in the 3rd round and used Diving Claw to win, but neither one is a legendary blader. And no, Johannes is not tied with Nemesis. Nemesis doesn't show up until much later. Meanwhile, Chris defeats Argo in the same chapter, Masamune beats Chiyun in the same chapter, Dynamis beats Ryutaro in the same chapter, and Jigsaw beats Sora in the same chapter. Then, a cloaked Tiffy defeated the Cheyenne. The top 8 for the Ultimate Bladers are now Jinga, King, Masamune, Dynamis, Chris, Jigsaw, Kenta, and Tiffy. Remember that for later. In the next 2 chapters, Jinga fights King and wins in Chapter 39, and Yuki does confirm during this time that yes, King is a legendary blader, which makes the second one. At the start of chapter 40, we got Chris versus Kenta. And Chris is considered a legendary blader. Chris is still a blader full of mystery. All we know is that he's part of the Bay Force and Elite Corps of the US Army. And since he's always struck down his opponents with less time than it does to say defeat, they have no data on him or what the true extent of his power is. And he's basically able to make his Beyblade go invisible or fast enough that it's able to disappear, but Kenta's not able to approach it in time and loses. In the same chapter, Masamune and Dynamis fight, but it's glossed over, but Masamune wins. Then in the fourth battle, Tiffy beats Jigsaw. Man, that would have been fun to see in the anime. Jinga confronts his dad about learning about Nemesis after he overhears him talk about it, and Jinga promises to win, so the next day he fights Chris, and Chris claims it's up to him to defeat Nemesis because his Phantom Orion was designed by the Bay Force specifically to defeat Nemesis. Jinga is able to counter Orion's disappearances by closing his eyes, coming down, and anticipating when it's going to strike next, which leads into chapter 41, where Jinga is able to win by replicating Kyoya's Crushing Fang attack to suck in Orion, but after the battle, the energy from the attack draws Nemesis faster down to the Earth, who crash lands. So the finals were basically going to be between Titi versus Masamune to decide who fight Jinga, basically. Which means Masamune didn't get eliminated from the tournament. Hooray! In chapter 42, the military attacks Nemesis, who has Rago's design, which there's an explanation for that, who basically blocks all of their missiles, makes him explode, and forces the army to retreat, and Jinga tries to fight him, but Nemesis, the Beyblade Nemesis contains all the strength of every blader ever created, defeating Jinga. Nemesis Rago uses Armageddon and tries to nuke everyone, but Titsy shows up using Quetzalcoatl, using its special move, Ascent Spark, to blast Armageddon up into the air and teleport it so it can't hurt anyone. Then teleports Jinga, Kenta, King, Yuki, Ryo, and I later found out Ryutaro and Sora, alongside Masamune, to the birthplace of Beyblade, where they'll discover the ultimate special move. There is also a bonus chapter where everyone's invited on the cruise ship, where everyone fights, and this is where we finally get Masamune revealing that his new Beyblade is Blitz Striker, which, for some reason, since they glossed over the fights, you guys never actually get to see him. Well, he does fight, you don't necessarily know that he is using Blitz Striker, but you get my points. Anyway, also there are other groups like Damien and Zio, Tsubasa, Yu, and Reiji working together, the Wang Kujong duo, Excalibur, Argo and Ian, Sora and Benkei, Ryutaro, Desert Blaze. Though, I'll talk about that later. I'll talk about that in a future video, but it's only Karte and Zidane. Gasser's not in the manga. Lyra and Alexi, Busujima, Tobio, Hikaru, Tetsuya, Dynamis, and I think Jigsaw and Kyoya and Ryuga, who were about to battle too, but Kyoya and Ryuga brought the wrong Beyblade somehow, leading to King and Aguma showing up and destroying everyone else before Jinga beats them both at the same time. Chris shows up to battle, but Jinga uses Stormbringer to give Chris seasickness and forces him to retreat. Properly in chapter 43, Titsy explains that to beat Nemesis, they have to learn the secret special move Cosmic Nova, so Jinga and Masamune head into the temple while Chris, Kenta, King, Titi, Yuki Kinda, and Ryo fight Doji's forces trying to stop Jinga and Masamune from doing so. Because Nemesis is in a deep sleep for a week, they're trying to master Cosmic Nova in the temple. And while it's not outright stated, especially given the fact that, Titi managed to teleport a giant nuke out of the way, they don't say it, but Titi's basically one of the other legendary bladers, and if you disagree, look at this panel. Sometimes show is better than tell. In chapter 44, Jinga's able to return, glowing when he uses Cosmic Nova, and with one day left, Titi teleports Ryutaro and Sora alongside everyone else to Koma Village after Jinga tells them that that's the perfect place to send them to, because he wants the fate of the world to be decided in the place he grew up in. When Nemesis comes to face him, they basically revealed that he didn't have this destructive power inside him, but he accumulated the wants and desires to hurt and stop by the inhabitants of the planet, especially since that there are humans like Ryuga at the time, Doji, and Faust who influenced him with the negative emotions of the hearts of the bladers from Earth, resulting in Rago's formation. Jinga decides to use Cosmic Nova, and this time everyone around amplifies Jinga by lending them his base spirits in order to counter Armageddon completely and obliterate Rago. But Rago comes back and tries a new special move, Last Armageddon, so Jinga uses a voice recording, a video recording that everyone can see from TV to call on everyone's help to lend them all their base spirits to blast Raigo out of the atmosphere when he reforms, including Doji and Ryuga helping out, and by using Super Cosmic Nova, the day is saved. So what can we learn from this? Basically, the legendary bladers that we know are confirmed in some way or form are Aguma, Chris, King, and Tiffy. That's it. We know Jinga, Kyoya, Ryuga, Kenta, and Masamune were invited to the tournaments. We also know Jigsaw and Dynamis were invited to the tournament, but we don't know if they were active bladers or legendary bladers, otherwise they would have told us. And since Masamune versus Dynamis got skipped over, we probably never will know if Dynamis was or wasn't, with the possibility that even Jigsaw could be, but we don't even know what Jigsaw or Dynamis' Beyblades were. Considering in the anime we have 9 legendary bladers, if you don't count Rago, and if you subtract Ryuga and after Kenta joined, so 9. If you count that, we have Aguma, Chris, King, and Titi. Considering that Jinga moved up, he technically should be counted. Kenta managed to make it to the 3rd round before getting eliminated by Chris, and Masamune had to fight Titi before moving on, but we don't know who would win that fight, though Titi probably would. So I guess you could look at it saying Aguma, Chris, King, Titi, Jinga, Kyoya, Ryuga, Kenta, Masamune, and or Jigsaw or Dynamis, but it's really just unclear. Plus, based on the fact that at the end of the chapters, they usually show us the tagline of what the Beyblades involved were used, we only see Aguma's, Chris, King's, Tiffy's, Kyoya, Ryuga's, and in the final chapter, we see Kenta with Flash Sagittario. Well, the semi-final chapter, but Kenta doesn't get Flash in the manga, so it was probably something that Adachi just probably got as information way too late, but, still decided to include when it comes to the data sheet, since, it's kind of important that your manga is also advertising the product too. So, if you guys want me to talk about the debate between who should have been a legendary blader in the anime, since the manga kind of only gives us 4 technically, and if there were more, we would have to speculate on who would be considered. That's a lot to consider, but if you guys want me to talk about it regarding the anime now, let me know. But because we only have 4, and the rest we can only speculate on if the others will count, between Jinga, Kyoya, Ryuga, Kenta, Masamune, Jigsaw, and Dynamis, if you could pick 5 out of those 7 to be legendary bladers in the manga, so we have 9 like we did in the anime, which 5 would you pick? Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. And BIP Bizarre Interest Productions, signing off.